So now we'll proceed to our training part of the program where we'll talk about some supervision strategies that can assist you in your everyday work with our students and providing supervision that will promote student success. These are the three keys that we'll talk about: the fostering a positive supervision environment, promoting self-awareness for students and self-reflection, and building upon essential clinical counseling skills. And our first key will be covered by Dr. Jennifer Curry, so I'll turn it over to her right now.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to cover these three different areas that Dr. Choate mentioned, and I'm going to be talking about the supervision relationship. All right, so key one is to build a positive supervision environment. And one of the things that you probably heard earlier is sort of the components that our program is built on. And you may be thinking, well, they take all these classes and then they're coming into practicum and they're coming into internship, but how do I fit into all of that? Well, part of it is how you structure your supervision hour. So students are coming into these field experiences and they're having to pull together all of the content that they've learned. So a lot of times they get stuck in the weeds of one client and they're overwhelmed by that client's experience. But supervision is the time when they can start to pull together all of the things that they've been learning. So if you think about your first supervision experience yourself, you probably felt quite overwhelmed. Like, how do I take things that I learned in theories and in my counseling classes and pull all these things together in a way that makes it coherent for me? So what I always do, and you probably have some process for this too, is ask the students before they come to organize their files. And I have a way that I ask them to organize it. And so if you've had one of my students, you know that I have these files very, very organized. And their sites probably also have ways that they expect them to organize. And so students should really have some system for how they're logging their case notes. They probably have some system for how they're writing a treatment plan. And so when they come in, they should have their files organized. And then they also may want to have some type of triage system. And in that triage system, I usually ask them to have their cases prioritized, meaning the most severe cases to the least severe. And within that system, I usually ask them to have 1 to 2 questions that they're prepared to ask per case. So what are your concerns for this client? What's the presenting problem? Dr. Manton's going to go over what we call the 5 Ps in a little bit. And we want you to know what the 5 Ps are, because that's going to also help you have a framework for discussing client cases. Now, beyond the presenting problem, what is it that you consider the stage of change for the client? In other words, is the client ready to make a change right now? Are they still considering changes they need to make regarding that presenting problem? Has something else occurred that the client has that's maybe more pressing of an issue? And then we'll talk a little bit about changes that the client's ready to make right now. And I'll kind of go through the treatment plan with the student. A lot of times they're struggling to know how to write a treatment plan. I have some students say to me, I don't even know where to start. So that prioritizing is a really important part. We don't want students to come in and just be chit-chatting. And that's a lot of what they want to do. Is kind of come in and tell you all the amazing, interesting details of a case. But we want them to have, first off, their systems created for organizing themselves, the presenting problems of the case, in a way that they're going to discuss it. You want to clarify your expectations. We don't want them to spend an entire supervision hour on one case. So it's important that you have them organized, that you give them a lot of information. We're going to spend time on your cases, but you need to come with questions you have. You need to come, for example, with a video that we're going to watch, but we're not going to watch an hour-long session. I want you to really focus on 10 to 15 minutes that we're going to watch together. And a lot of times students think that you're going to watch all their videos when before they come, and they want to send you every video and you're going to watch every, interaction, and you're going to tell them what to do next. That's not your role. Your role is for them to bring in a video that they've already keyed up and they have questions prepared. And you also want to set an expectation that they're going to have done some research. If the client's presenting issue is something, let's say like violence or anger, have they done research on the evidence-based practices for the particular type of violence or anger that the client is presenting? And if they have not done that research, well, that's part of their assignment for the next week. So a lot of times students will come in and think, well, you're going to give me the answers to this client. So we want to set an expectation that they are going to do their own research. Now, considering what the presenting issues are and what the client is facing and the difficulties and the whole system and what type of client it is, a child or an adult, that may be a little bit a part of what they need to research. So clarify expectations with your student. What is it you're expecting them to do? And have they done it? You also want to put these things in writing. They need to be in supervision on time, how long the supervision is going to last. Some students would love to keep you for 2 or 3 hours every week. They will want to maybe call you or email you in between times. Maybe you're their favorite supervisor, even though they have a university supervisor and a site supervisor. Maybe you're the one they really want to talk to the most. And that's okay. Everybody has their preferences, but your time is important, and they need to understand that when they're out and paying for supervision, they're going to need to be able to focus and get through the supervision hour effectively. So you want to build an alliance. You want to be supportive, but that doesn't necessarily mean praising. So while we want to say, here's something that you did well, we want it to be specific. So saying what you did really well in that session was listening thoroughly till you understood the problem. And you did a great job with coming back around to the problem later and showing the client that they had some contradictions between what they said the problem was and their behavior. All right. So giving really positive feedback, but making it specific. But you also want to help the client, the supervisee to see maybe some areas of growth. And to do that, you're going to have to challenge them. So a lot of times we as supervisors want to tell the student, hey, listen, you're doing great, you're doing fantastic, you did this, this, and this well, because they're anxious and they're worried and they want positive feedback. But over time, we know that they grow from both positive and supportive feedback that's specific. It has to be specific, but they also grow from hearing some challenging feedback. And the supervisors that tend to long term do really well with our students are ones who can give both types of feedback. All right, so you want to encourage them to think about finding their own answers instead of just giving them answers. You can do some different things to get them there. For example, asking them questions when they come in and say, I have this client, I have this going on, and this and this and that. Say, okay, well, let's talk about that client. What do you think is the main or primary problem that client's facing? And what's the evidence-based practice for somebody with that issue? All right. So, what kind of research have you done on that? So try to give them some challenges, some questions, get them thinking. What do you remember about theory? I've even had people bring their theories books, their theories notes, and what are the therapeutic interventions that go with that theory? And how might that work with a client of this age or this client's developmental context? You don't want them to become dependent on you, so giving them too many answers can make them dependent. And we want them to start tolerating some discomfort. It's hard not to know the answer, and there's a lot of ambiguity in counseling. So we want them to have to start dealing with that. We don't want them to procrastinate. So if they come 1 or 2 weeks without a video, if they come a couple of weeks without their notes being completed, or they just have sat in too many sessions with a client kind of doing the same thing because they don't know what to do next, we're going to have to challenge that a little bit. Low self-efficacy. A lot of students have low self-efficacy to start with, so we want to help them kind of get through those hurdles. Last week, you can point out some positive things. Last week you came in, said you didn't know what to do with this client, but I see you wrote a treatment plan here following some evidence-based practices, and you have identified a problem. You've written the treatment plan. You have the theory that goes with the client's presenting problem and the therapeutic approaches that you can use that align. So good work. We expect them to succeed. Our belief does help them also to believe in themselves, and it builds trust. A lot of times I'll say, I know you can do this. I've seen you do other things. Here's some things I've seen you do. So I know that you'll get through this as well. I had a student who had a very difficult situation in the past week. And I went to her site and we walked through a few things together. And then about an hour in, she was just positive it was going to be a disastrous day. And about an hour in, I said, so tell me a little bit about how you're feeling right now. And she was like, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And I was like, would you like me to stay? And she said, no, I've got this. And I said, I believe you do have it. So after that, she was fine with me leaving. And a lot of times it's just because they realize, oh, I do have this, I can make it happen. So, it strengthens the relationship, but it also strengthens their belief in themselves. Okay, now I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Cesar, and he's going to talk about key number 2.
So this key number 2 is focusing on promoting self-awareness and self-reflection. First, I just want to mention a couple of common issues that we have seen or can be seen in working with supervisors, and also some of the strategies that you may use. You see some of these quotes here, and the most common issue with the students or they have really unrealistic beliefs and expectations. They may believe that, oh, I'm going to save everybody, I'm going to do it all, and they also putting that on themselves that it is all up to me. I have to take care of this before the end of the session, or I have to take care of the everything and make sure that the client is healed by the end of the semester. And then also they have these reoccurring thoughts of, oh, I'm only a student. They have this imposter syndrome of, yes, I chose this profession, or I want to do well, but I'm just not good enough. So this is something that you want to prepare them as you talk about expectations with them. Ask the supervisor, what are your expectations about yourself? What are your expectations as a professional? What you are able to, or you are able to do? And if you hear any of these misconceptions, either directly or that's the undertone of their communication, then you want to show them that this is gonna be prevent them to become who they so desire to be. Another major issue here, or common issue that we've seen, or we can see quite a bit, is countertransference. And this is between the student or the counselor and the counselor in training and the client. It is when people or when the students want to befriend the client. They are so overzealous of making the connection, the rapport, that they overdo it. They want to please the client, and that anxiety that is underneath it is really limits their insight. They may this may prevent them to even challenge the client and nudge the client to progress. And another counter-transference quote that you see here, my client is my child, is telling the client what to do. So when they take charge, this is when they give advice, in many ways they control the client. The client may say, "What would you like me to do?" or "What you would do," and the student do not have that capacity at that point of correcting that. That it's not about what a counselor would want to do, but more so about what kind of answer or what kind of decision the client has within, or they can come together to a decision as to set out. So some of the strategies, and Dr. Curry, would you please advance the slide here? So we wanted to give you some ideas of what to do or how to handle the topic of self-awareness or increased self-awareness and self-reflection. And this is not an extensive list, and it's not also that you would have to do every single one of these. But these are just some general thoughts or ideas that you may be able to use successfully. Our profession focuses quite a bit on reflective practices. So one of the major one here as a strategy is implement and use reflective practices. And there are several ideas within this frame too, is you can ask reflective questions, focusing on a positive. What went well? What were the challenges? And if there were challenges, and likely so, how do you see yourself grow from that? You can also ask about what emotions they may have been present, and then how those emotions influence the students. So asking about feelings and their own assumptions. So in many ways, opening up the student or your supervisee of discovering their own reality of what are their biases, and that way they can become more aware of themselves. Part of this is journaling as well, or reflective practice and self-reflection log. And many times students do shy away from this, but we would invite you to try to convince them and talk about the importance of reflective practice even in journaling. And they have heard that before, and we tell them that when they journal and then they return to the journal, they can discover themselves, because once they remove themselves from what they have written and they return to that entry, to that journal entry, they can become a little bit more objective of that experience that has passed, and invite them to bring their journals with them into supervision, and not necessarily share every single word that they wrote, but what may be very important to them. And as part of reflective practice, we encourage our student to be present and be mindful and practice that being present in the moment, and being even engaged in mindfulness practices that helps them not only become more self-aware, but also more grounded and more certain, and perhaps recognizing the opportunities, or even becoming grateful of that experience, even if it's challenging and sometimes uncomfortable. And through that, it's emotional. They can increase their emotional intelligence as well. Another strategy that we would want to suggest is using the feedback, and as part of that is self-assessment. You can ask the supervisee before you give your own evaluations. How do they evaluate themselves? In fact, the CCSS is used for self-evaluation too, and encourage the supervisee or student that they shouldn't be just going through that CCSS or any other formative evaluation tool, just going through the motions, but how are they seeing themselves? It's going to be important, and comparing that with what they are hearing, hopefully will build them up and point out strength and point out growth areas. Go ahead. Would you please advance this presentation, Dr. Curry? Other strategy is role playing and experiential learning, you may choose to do this given either a client scenario that the student is bringing to you, or another scenario that the student may have not faced, but again, it would be a growth opportunity, and encourage the student or challenge the student to look at that scenario of how it would be. Or if you're talking about one particular case where the student is stuck, what other options are available as far as how the student would be handled that. A form of this is called deliberate practice, that it is not only about completing a task, but it's about improving performance. And if you look at a video and the student or the supervisor may be saying, I didn't do so well here, then you would prompt the student, okay, how would you do this? How would you do that differently? And let's practice that. So the student is able to become in that role again, and then they are trying to improve or role play a new skill. You want to also be cautious of what's happening with the student prior, during, and even after this exercise, and as they are reflecting the emotions, and show them how they are acting or reacting in this exercise, and then what may be meaning for the student, or what may come out of that. Again, from that discomfort, there may be a growth area. Then the next one would be setting personal and professional development goals. We keep telling students that, goals and inspirations or aspirations are very important. And it's not about to overwhelm the student or you, but choosing one purposeful goal a semester, or one at the beginning of the semester and one in midterm, will help them, and it will also help you, the supervisor, gauging the progress that they are making. And go back to these goals every couple of weeks. And ask the student, how are you doing with this? Where do you think that you have had a positive experience and you have progressed? Where do you need help if there is no positive improvement, or if the student is hitting a plateau? How can we move, or what do you think? How would you able to move on from this plateau? Next slide, please. And then here is a couple of other examples of some supervision models that has been used on our field, and one of them is Gibbs. These are quite old, but it's very they are accepted and proven approaches. Two different approaches. One of them is Gibbs, and the other is Kolb's experiential learning cycle. As reflective practice, either of these you would be using. You follow the circles or the cycle here, and any given situation you can use is, we were just going to take Gibbs examples here. Is what is the description of the scenario, what actually happened, and what are the feelings that they may be arising, what is your evaluation of that, and it's beyond the evaluation, how do we analyze this situation? This is where most of the learning may come from, is what happened, what are we learning, what can we improve, where is the growth area? And the conclusion part is really needs to be written down to crystallize the whole experience. This is about the decisions of what can I do to change and how I'm going to do it. And the last phase in the Gibbs cycle here is the action plan. What are we going to do? And then with coming to a full cycle, back to the description, hopefully on a different level when it comes to evaluation, the student can take away their growth experience from that. I believe this concludes the different strategies or ideas for strategies. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Menton.
Thank you, Dr. Cesar. So I am here with key 3 about how we are going to build on these essential counseling skills. And much as we do in our work as counselors and mental health professionals, we really view skill development through a developmental lens, right? So throughout the program, in their coursework, students are engaging in practical exercises, role plays with each other. During their skills class, they have practice clients that they're utilizing these skills with. And then in their field experience, continuing that scaffolded approach to practice and build these skills. So, one way that we can think of this is really helping, as Dr. Curry mentioned earlier, our students to identify what are both their areas for strength as well as their areas for growth. Um, and you can use the CCSS as a guide for providing your feedback. So I think of these first 2 sections as kind of our basic counseling skills, right? Building the therapeutic alliance, the relationship, and those basic counseling skills that encourage exploration. And so these are skills that probably early on in practicum, early on in internship, are really going to be a heavy emphasis since they're still building those muscles of how to build those rapport building skills and exploration skills with their clients. Of course, you'll continue revisiting these skills throughout their practice, but as they develop more, these tend to become more second nature. And so then you'll start to shift to the deepening skills, which are on the next slide. So really, again, throughout that developmental frame, looking at these skills for deepening the session. So again, those reflections of meaning, confrontations, which I'm sure if you've been supervising for any period of time or can remember your early stages, felt really scary and can to a lot of our students. How do they use immediacy and self-disclosure in effective ways with their clients? And then really encouraging our students to always, and our interns and practicum students to always think about how are we helping clients move toward change, promoting growth and change. Often sites will have a framework for how students will meet with their clients, whether that's brief solution focused, whether they'll have ongoing relationships with clients. And so encouraging your practicum student or your intern to really think about how the frame that they have at their site will work with the plan for change. So their therapeutic treatment plan may look different if they can only see a client for 4 sessions versus if they're going to have an ongoing relationship with that client for the entire semester or the entire year. And one way that we do this, and we encourage our students to do this, is through the use of case conceptualization as a frame for that. So if we can move to the next slide. So all of our students, whether they're in the school counseling track or in the clinical mental health track, have exposure to this case conceptualization model, the 5 Ps of case conceptualization. So they learn this in counseling theories and skills. It's revisited throughout their other courses, through practicum and internship, through that scaffolded approach of first applying it to case examples and then applying it to real clients. And so this is just an overview here, but on the next slide, I go a little bit more in depth with how we would apply the 5 Ps of case conceptualization from McNeil et al. So we start with the presenting problem. What is the primary focus of our counseling session here, right? What signs and symptoms, challenging behaviors have brought the client into treatment. Students learn how to formulate a problem list, and they have a framework for how to prioritize that problem list, starting first with issues of safety, then moving into issues that are having the most impairment in functioning, and then kind of moving into what are areas that the client wants to work on, as well as areas that would improve wellness. We also really emphasize students identifying and using this frame of the stage and level of change. So the stage of change would be, what is the client's readiness for change and their awareness of the need for change? And the level of change really looks at which level does the presenting problem occur. So is this more of a symptom situational level, a family systems level, an intrapsychic level of change, but really looking at the presenting problem through that lens. Then from there, we have our students consider the other P's, right? So starting with our predisposing factors, which these are those biopsychosocial factors that might increase the client's vulnerability to either developing this problem or exacerbating this problem. So some of those biological factors could be genetics or heredity, epigenetics, those types of things. The psychological factors could be their cognitive and emotional patterns for processing. The social patterns have to do with, both their kind of immediate social relationships as well as the macro social dynamics, and really helping our students conceptualize on those broad layers as well as the micro layers. The precipitants are what is the actual trigger that for this presenting problem at this point in time, right? Or if it was an existing problem, what exacerbated the problem to the point that the client or the student is seeking help at this point, right? The question we always have them ask themselves with the precipitating factors is, why now? Why at this point in time does this client need help at this particular phase of their life? So what are those precipitants? The perpetuating factors are any factors that either maintain or exacerbate the problem. So examples of this could be family systems dynamics, lack of resources or support, limited access to care. So anything that would keep the problem going or make the problem worse. And then, of course, we always want to look at any protective factors that are available as well, so that we can encourage our students to recognize those strengths, resources, resilience factors that clients bring, while also reinforcing that for their clients as well. And we want to have them look at both internal resources as well as external resources. And they may have to help their clients be able to identify those. And so one of the things that you can do is we do ask them in both their practicum and their internship to prepare case formulations for their group staffings. So you might ask them to share that with you, because really what they're doing through that is they're working through this 5 P's of case conceptualization. They're developing that prioritized problem list. And then we also have them identify what are some questions that you have for supervision. So similarly to as Dr. Curry was describing earlier, having them think ahead of time of, how do I want to use this time in supervision? What do I need to get out of this? This case formulation also includes self-reflection from the student, as well as having them look at any relevant research for the case. Next slide, please. All right, and then, oh, sorry. So then just looking at some skill development strategies, we really do encourage you to observe your students or your supervisees, so that you can give feedback on their skills. We can definitely give feedback through them sharing their experiences, but there is no substitution for live observation or video observation. In practicum and internship both, they are required to obtain videos. So I would encourage you to ask your supervisees to share that with you. You want to help them learn to identify and label skills themselves. And that may require, again, that scaffolding approach of you providing that label initially, and then maybe asking them, what skill did you use here, right? Having them start to identify that. Focusing on that case formulation can be really helpful, especially when students or supervisees might be feeling overwhelmed with complex cases. That provides a really helpful framework for how are they going to navigate these complex cases? What are our priorities? What do I have time to address considering the limitations of this experience and or this site? And then really providing both formative and summative feedback. So the formative feedback is that ongoing feedback that you're going to be having in your weekly supervision. Whereas the summative feedback might be kind of at that CCSS midterm final evaluation meetings, and both are really important. And really considering, one of the frames I use is watering and pruning, that in order to grow, students need both watering, so they need us to really emphasize all of those strengths that they're bringing to the table, as well as that pruning to know how can I make sure that I'm developing and growing in this profession in a really healthy way. So that's it for me. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Cesar, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Menden. This is our last slide, and this is the conclusion of this training. We wanted to thank you for your work with our students and with our program. Thank you for your support. You are vital part of our work with our students, and we really appreciate all you do. And we would like to let you know that we are there for you as well. Please keep us informed. Let us know if we as a program can help you or help your site. If you have any questions, program questions included, please let us know. If you run into a challenge or an issue or a problem, with any of our students, with your supervisors, let us know, and let us know right away. We believe in this approach of united quote unquote parental front. We want to treat issues or challenges early on, so we would be able to set up a plan if needed, and that would serve everyone's success, yours, the students, as well as ours. And also let us know, please, what do you think? How could we, or what can we do to improve our students in our program in the future? So if you have any thoughts or ideas regarding that or any of the above that was said, please let us know and talk about that. Again, I and we appreciate your time and your work, and hopefully see you soon. Thank you.